Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of your boys from the Papertrails podcast. I'm your host, Shamaki, joined by my co-host, Mo. Here we are again, eh?
Yep.
Keeping it going, keeping it rolling.
Of course.
And
Gotta be
we've
done.
got a very personal one for you guys today.
Yeah.
I would say so. I feel like this one here is probably one that I've been thinking about for a while, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
Why?
the book that we're covering is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie.
Daniel, God. Oh,
Is the name Dale Carnegie?
Dale Carnegie.
Oh, is it not Carnegie though?
No, it's Carnegie.
Carnegie,
Yeah, he
yeah,
said it.
okay.
I think he said it himself in them.
Okay, Dale Carnegie.
An author we've covered before.
Yeah, on
How to win friends and influence
and
people.
influence people. Yeah, so he was basically like a psychologist kind of guy back in the day. He was doing self-help books
Yeah.
and stuff like that before it was even a thing.
Yeah.
When Mo suggested it to me, I was like, okay, cool. This is
Interesting one.
It's a good one,
Mm-hmm.
but on top of that, it's kind of like this is something I felt like I needed
Yeah.
right now.
Me too. I was
You know what I mean? I think so because for me as a creative, it
he
gets
loves a bit of that.
Huh?
I'm gonna do a compilation of as a creative over the season.
No, because this is what it's for our creative family. you
Yes.
know? No, but I feel like a lot of the time, especially when you haven't, let's say, I mean, I would say we're kind of like new again.
Yeah, of course.
But like, it's that constant worry about getting to that position quicker. Like, for example, when you do the podcast, when you make a video, or even when you're writing and stuff like that, you're constantly worried about, is this going anywhere? And then therefore, you stop what you're doing immediately before it even gains any traction, before it even gains any stuff like that. And I felt like just listening to this, just having he's at the audio book that we were listening to, the guy that was narrating has a very like
I think it is.
American. Nah, I doubt it's him.
I think it's him.
Is it him?
Yeah, I think it is.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, he's got a very calming voice anyway.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like the type of person that you want to hear calm yourself down from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why when you sent it to me, I was like, yeah, I can't wait to read this or listen to it, and then to digest and tell you guys some of my outtakes from it. How about yourself? How would you say?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's funny because like we always talk about this as a creative side of thing, but I didn't even think about it in that way at all while I was listening to it. Because for me, I was just like, I think for me, I'm getting by. I feel like the common thing with a lot of our generation is housing costs. Everything is getting expensive. Living is expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the main worry lies in society, and in me definitely. That's a constant worry for me as well.
Absolutely.
Like obviously providing for the family and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Where I've always been like, oh, I'm just gonna continue working, like just grinding, just so I can get by and help the family out.
Yeah.
And like how far that will go, I never kind of knew, and took a moment to think about it and pause, and like that worry has always been underlying for me. And like then you obviously occasionally have like the occasional like family something happens, like whether it's positive or negative, where large financial draw. So I don't know if I'm being honest, if it's purely monetary for me.
Yeah.
But I would say, where's my money gonna come from in the long term?
No, but like that's because that's how I felt.
Yeah.
Because the only reason why I say the creative things is I feel like that's where money could come from. Do you know what I mean? That's where I feel like I would like to be earning as a profession the bulk of my money.
But for me, it's not like this.
Pursuit.
It's not the sake of I want to make enough money for it to be the bulk of my money. Is that I want to make enough money from my creative pursuits to survive, kind of thing. But like sometimes I don't even think about where it could really take me if I thought about it in an expansive way, where like I become rich from it, wealthy from it. I'm more thinking about, can I match my current salary with like doing work in the creative field? Where that's where like I worry a lot about these things, and like especially like leaving my career and like diving into starting something new. That's another thing that he talked about. Like just regret. Yeah, I don't have a lot of regrets, but I do have like deep lingering feelings, which I wouldn't call regret, but it's just
when you
more
say deep lingering feelings, what do you mean?
like about like my career direction.
Yeah,
where I don't feel envious of other people. like regret the things that I've done so far, because I do feel like I've learned a lot from it in my life and developed a lot. But I just feel like, but what if I did something different, and what if I start fresh now? Where will I be?
Yeah.
Like, I do worry about that a lot. Like, it's not so much monetary for me, I would say, at this point anyway.
Yeah.
But obviously I've been doing a lot of things in the background now to set myself up in such a way that I don't have to rely on one job to produce an income.
Yeah.
And that's where like my worries change a lot. And I come from a family who worry a lot as well.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, we're gonna discuss it. We talked about it during the car ride. Like, health is such an important thing as well.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I just want to be in a place where I feel healthy, feel stable financially. Like, I don't want to like aspire to like greatness, and I don't even mind doing creative. Like, I'm at a point where I feel like I'm happy to be creative as a hobby.
Yeah.
I like just something that slows me down every now and then. But yeah, like I want to find gratitude and wealth in other ways where I don't feel like it has to come from one place.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that mindset makes me feel a bit more limited. To say in career this.
Yeah.
Where I want to feel like I can bounce around in my life and do different things and not worry all the time about what's next, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I'll also touch up on a bit of what you said, but also from my aspect in terms of the thing, I have to say majority of it is monetary. I feel like
You got to be honest.
I'll be like 95% of my problems would be solved if there was money.
And 95% of people would say the same thing.
You know what I mean? Like, I had a talk today with my mum about family members in Somalia that needed help. And it's kind of like, obviously you will help them, but it's like if you had that amount that would stop the help.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Rather
Teach
than
them
just
how to fish
supplement.
instead of giving the fish.
Like actually, you know, giving them something like, here's this, start that with it. You know what I mean? Something like in that sense.
Even a simple thing like could be a set of laptops that could transform a whole little village.
No, of course.
Eventually.
Yeah, and so it's like kind of like, so then when it's like I go home and stuff like that, and it's just like the worry or the problem is in front of my face like every single time. Do you know what I mean?
What do you mean?
Like in terms of like the financial, the monetary gain would alleviate all the worries. Essentially.
You mean the problem isn't being like just being wealthy?
Yeah.
The problem of not being wealthy. Basically.
You know, it's like was Everybody's Chris was one of them, but they were essentially talking about that aspect of it, of like if you had the money, then there wouldn't be these fights inside the house, kind of situation. And not saying that there's fighting in the house, in my household, no, but it's just kind of like there is that unspoken thing of, okay, we need to step it up. So it's kind of like it then comes back to the creativity kind of aspect of kind of like, not necessarily it, I mean, kind of how you said to hop about and do different things. My question to that is like, right now, to get yourself out of that position, you wouldn't be able to, I mean, I don't know, actually, maybe would you be able to bounce about different things, or would you like to focus on one set thing to get you out of that to then focus on the other stuff?
It's more like, for me, is a case of finding contentment in my current situation. In terms of, okay, I'm doing this, I don't need to be stressed or worried about it all the time. And I can move on to something else, and I have the option.
Like if you wanted to,
I have the option to restart.
Yeah.
And be successful.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different things that, like the books we've read in recent times, like it feels like, I don't know, because I feel like I've recommended a lot of these more self-help books this season. I don't know why.
Because to be fair, I don't really listen to it.
Which I don't normally. But I'm in a period in my life where I feel like I'm learning a lot more about myself again. Like just the last year, I've just had so many different experiences that are just completely new to me in the last 10 years, I'd say. So like I feel like I'm in a period where I'm just like I'm forcing myself to learn different ways of finding ways to survive and remove these kind of worries from my head. So like for me, like I don't remember what book it was, but it was talking about how you can take life in like 5-year periods where like you can kind of get semi-level of success if you just stick to one thing every 5 years. Like obviously they can't just be like completely unrelated.
Yeah.
But if they have a similar like set of soft skills, people skills, and a similar level of similar set of like criteria to do those careers, you can kind of mold in and mold out of those roles that you put yourself in, and not worry so much about being stuck in one, and also not worrying about not like being successful in one as well.
No, absolutely. And obviously, not to try and put too much worry on our audience, but we want to, because this is aesthetic productivity, but at the end of the day, we got to look at ourselves. We got to have a good, so we want to take you guys along with us in this sense of like understanding yourself and understanding what your worries are necessarily, and then through the different tips and stuff we'll give in this book to hopefully try and find your way out through that. So like, for example, with me, it's kind of like, you've mentioned some good stuff there, but like, it's kind of like, I want, you know how you said the 5-year increment thing, right? It's like, for me though, it's like, I want that like now. I want it's like the success of it, like, or where I want to be at is like, I'm very impatient for it.
Yeah.
And like, not so, like impatient enough to the extent that it's like the thought of constantly having to like understand that you're not there and you're nowhere near there and you have to like keep on at it is crippling enough.
Yeah. Not to do anything.
Not to do anything.
Yeah.
So then there was like one of the first things that he said in his book that helped me in that aspect was, he was actually talking about that. He was kind of talking about how like a lot of people, their worries come from either thinking too much about what's to come, or thinking too much about what's happened in the past, but not thinking about what's today. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that Alice in Wonderland quote of like, it's always jam tomorrow, jam yesterday, but never jam today.
Yeah.
No one cares about the jam you've got today, you know? So it's like kind of accepting that is like, okay, fine, the future is what it is. Past is what it was, but today is all you have. So you just have to take that one step forward now, whether it's like not a massive step that will quickly elevate you to the place that you're going, but it's just kind of like putting blinkers on, being like, this is, you know, this is the path you have to take in one step at a time to try and, you know what I mean?
I think it just keeps on coming back over in these different books that I'm reading. It just keeps on coming back. Dr. Peter Attia's Outlive, other, I think 4,000 Weeks it was called. I forgot who the author was. What was it? Ali Abdal's book. It keeps on coming back to acceptance of time. Time is always going to be limited. Your life is always going to be limited. You could die any day. So what's the use of worrying constantly about the future or the past? And I think I think that's what the book is about in a nutshell. But the title of How to Stop Worrying, it really does, I feel like, detail a lot of these different tips and advice that he's got, because everything's not going to work for everyone. So like, I think because we talked about on the way here, he said that like he goes in so much detail into like one specific point. Where I just feel like that's because it might not hit for one person the same way it hits for someone else, and for certain stories. And I think he tells so many stories in this book because one of them might relate to you, one of them might relate to someone else. I think it was really interesting and well written.
No, of course.
But, it was just hitting the notes the whole time.
You know what I've noticed there? You've been saying this has been hitting the spot, hitting the notes, hitting this. Well, is this like a new kind of phrase that you just
I don't know, man.
decided to
me, I like
take
to push
up?
phrases, you know.
Hitting the this, goodness me, bro.
So I'm one of them guys. Like, if I was in a show, I'll be
that's your catchphrase.
That guy that's like trying to break the fourth wall. Like, yeah, guys, remember this phrase?
Yeah, literally. But also, like I would say one example as well that he gave that was a really good one was about this guy that didn't know nothing about. He was like a salesman, and then he went into the trade of like being like a TNT mover or something like that. He like exports TNT. So he's on this ship, and he's saying that the crew handlers were just like being dilly-dally with like how they were putting the TNT, and he was like, this would like blow you into smithereens if anything goes wrong, you know? And then he was saying that he was watching, his eyes were like wide open, his mouth was dry, his knees were buckling. He was like, yo, like these guys look too like lackadaisical about what's about to happen here. You know, and then he was like, then I like the phrases that he used. He's like, I gave myself a good talking to.
Yeah.
And I told myself, listen, the worst thing that could happen is you die.
Yeah.
And it's like, the worst thing that could happen is you die and you won't even feel it. And if that did happen, then all stuff and all this kind of stuff like would be gone. You wouldn't even have time to think about the pain or any of this other stuff, right? And he was like, as morbid as it sounded, it was like comforting enough to accept the situation that he was in. So then as the hours went on and the days went on, because he had to be there for a few days, he was less and less anxious and less worried about the thing. So again, it comes back down to that acceptance.
Yeah.
That acceptance things of like, okay, this is the situation, right, that you are in now. The worst thing that could happen is X, Y, Z. And he was actually, he was talking about like writing it down. So you said to...
Well, the main tips that he gives, like the main core tips that everyone should do, like if they're worrying too much.
Which was like...
what's the worst case scenario?
What am I worried about precisely?
Yes.
Like actually writing it down. What can I do about it? And then deciding what to do about it. And then going about what to do about it.
Yeah. And when you're saying, what am I worrying about, you have to get all the facts.
For everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the more, the trick is the more you actually write about it, the more you realize either it's not that bad or the more your body subconsciously starts to accept, okay, this is where it is right now.
And it's interesting because he starts with writing about it as the core principle. But later on, he says, you know what? Some people don't even need to write about it. Start praying about it. Whether it doesn't matter what God you're praying to, whatever. There's a lot of like having faith in a higher power and like praying to someone, as in speaking, feeling like you're not alone, speaking your worries out to a higher power that you believe in, that can like scientifically alleviate your faith, which is funny because he quotes like different religions quite a lot. He quotes Prophet Muhammad a lot. I think like 5 times in the book. And then he's quoting a lot about Jesus. He's the devout Christian himself. But it's just interesting to see him quoting so much like from other faiths and
of course,
and encouraging people to like just think about it from their point of view in terms of their faith perspective. So I thought that was interesting because he's like, okay, if you're not gonna write it, at least like pray on it. Like that's essentially what we do as Muslims. Like, he's literally saying like, tell your worries to the higher power if you can, because a lot of the time you might not want to tell your worries to someone who's close to you.
Someone, exactly.
If your wife, your mom, your dad, your son, your daughter, whatever. So I thought that was very interesting as well.
Of course, or even like the expression of like gratitude.
Let's get onto that after.
Yeah, no, but I was just going to say in this point, like even like the Prophet ﷺ telling us to say Alhamdulillah regardless of whichever situation. If it's a good thing, you say it, or like if it's a bad thing, you still say it. You know what I mean? And that in itself is a nutshell of actually helping to alleviate your worries, because it is acceptance. You are accepting that this is the situation I'm in and this is what is going on. And to kind of, you know what I mean, help yourself mentally cope with what's happening. Yeah.
Like just, right, so before we dive a bit deeper into it, I had a question for you. You kind of answered it a bit, but like we talked about a bit about my relationship with worrying in the car a bit earlier, but I'll delve into that a bit deeper after. But like, what's your relationship with worrying? Like, did you grow up in a family that worried a lot? Did you yourself worry a lot growing up, or was there any phases in your life where you worried more than you did maybe now or before? And do you consciously... Are you aware that you're worrying as well? That's another thing.
That's a deep one. That I even want to talk about that. You know what I mean? That causes problems in the body. No, but I would say growing up, there weren't really many worries. I'll be honest. Alhamdulillah, I was like thankful, like free from that. Essentially, there wasn't like a sense of like dread or like, oh, okay, we're not able to put things together. There was no means. There was no food. It was kind of, everything was like quite smooth sailing. I'd say the only time that I would proper like really, really worried was when like we got hit with an eviction. And that one there, that's like, you know, I think you don't, again, it's all like, for me, the main worries have circled around monetary stuff. And I think the eviction is like something so, you feel so helpless.
Yeah.
In a way, you're like, and
very vulnerable.
Very vulnerable. And on top of that, it's like kind of like, this is your house. This is your home. This is where you knew.
This
is where you've grown up.
Home is where the heart is.
Yeah, literally. And then you're like, oh, wait, I have no shelter. Really? That's what you're telling me right now, that you're kicking me out of this. And then it's kind of like, it's just like a weird sinking kind of thing. And then on top of that, you can't necessarily just be like, oh, yeah, well, I'll just go to a friend's house or someone else's house or this and that. You can't really lumber your worries onto someone else. So you kind of have to...
Oh, you can.
Well, you can, but like in a way, you don't really want to be pressing onto someone's like just like 5 people coming into someone else's house.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So then it's kind of like, okay, cool. This is a very personal thing that you have to go through. You have to experience courts and stuff like that. And like I remember sitting at one of the court like benches thing. And we had like, I think someone that's from the council, like, you know, the free people, the free lawyers that they give you. Not to diminish their role, they do great stuff for the community. It was just her, and she got the case like that morning, so she couldn't even come up with anything that great. So she's like pleading for some case that's like essentially dead in the water. And then on the other side, I can see like the landlord's people and like this in suits looking like Harvey Specter and stuff like that. I'm like, damn, man, he's standing up, oh, this and that, blah, 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 talking. And then I was like, yeah, now we're finished here. You know what I mean? So that I would say was like probably the biggest worrying aspect of like thing, because it was just kind of a case of like, what happens now? Where do you... Like, you can kick off of everything if you have somewhere to live. I think it's like the Maslow's like
hierarchy of needs.
Like, if you have like shelter and stuff like that and food, then you can start thinking about other stuff. If you have no shelter, then you're just like, you don't have nothing.
Basic necessity to survive.
So I'd say that was the biggest.
Did you feel that affected you physically?
Yeah, I remember feeling, well, actually 2 things is like, initially, like I had a deep sense of like fatigue. Like I was like, I feel like I'm tired anyway.
Yeah. You definitely have low vitamin D, bro.
100%. But I felt like that made me even more tired today. It was like
a mental fatigue.
Yeah, it was just kind of like like you have to go through a day again, and it's just long, and you just can't. And like I would be waking up at like 8 p.m. and it'd just be normal. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like thing. And then the second feeling after that was like a strong sense of motivation to try and change the circumstance. And yeah, so I'd say that was a really, really interesting time. It would have been great to have the book then as well, to take it kind of, you know what was so funny as well? I remember just hearing one quote in the back of my mind. It was from like Game of Thrones, and it was like Jon Snow, where he's up against an army that's like bigger than his, and then he's like, wars have been won against far greater odds. And then for some reason it was really comforting. Yeah, I mean,
that always goes back to war, man. This guy, man, you make him the leader of a nation. He's going straight to the next nation. On your land.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you gotta do.
Yeah, that knocking the sharks. Sharks is at the door.
Yeah, no, but that was a weird, comforting quote for me at that time. But yeah,
I'll protect us from that again.
Yeah,
but yeah, man, I think like you said, I think housing is such an issue, especially with Muslims as well. Obviously, we don't believe in interest.
Yeah,
that's not something. It is forbidden for us.
Yeah,
and rightfully so. There's so many negatives with interest, and like you see in like society now. Like I saw a woman who had she had a mortgage for like 25 years or something, and it jumped overnight from like $1,000 a month to like 2.5 grand a month. Yeah, where that's suddenly like that's almost half your salary if you're on like 50K or something. Yeah, like that's a lot of money that just come out of nowhere. Of course. And that's somewhere you probably had like a couple children, you lived there 15 years or whatever. Yeah. Like there's so many issues with interest, and like obviously as Muslims, it's hard for us to find housing because of that. So we're often driven to private sector and all this stuff as a result. But yeah, man, I think housing is such an important thing, and I'm hopeful there'll be like some good housing solutions for Muslims in the future. But for now, I feel like we really do have to put that pressure on ourselves to get more wealthy, to be able to
of course,
either buy or rent somewhere comfortable. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of us don't feel like we have any what do you call it, belief in being able to even afford one in our lifetimes. So I think a lot of like worrying comes back to mentality as well. Like you accept your situation, but then like you also think about what's next. I think like the quote that you said, live in date-type compartments is very important. I'm like a huge dreamer. For me, I'm like I can daydream for days, and like I don't need anything nowadays to the point where I do feel like I can't sleep now without listening to something because I think I dream too much.
Like do you think you dream too much, or do you feel like it's an underlying trauma? Because I got the same thing.
No, it's 100%. It's 100% because like I've grown up being someone who's very comfortable being by myself and not listening to things. But I also grew up very worried and very stressed because I was constantly thinking too much and thinking about my thoughts a lot. So I feel like a coping mechanism I've developed in my 20s is just to listen to stuff while I'm trying to sleep, so I can sleep peacefully. Which works, but I know it's not healthy, which is dangerous.
There's definitely something there that
so
I might need to look into.
So like I feel like I need to find different coping mechanisms to like think about, like just I guess be more comfortable in my own presence. So like the book we read in the last book reading session, Make Time. He talks about going out into nature. Don't take your headphones out. Like, just go by yourself, innit? And I think that's very important. But I often struggle when I'm in those situations because I start overthinking so many different things.
Let's kind of unpack that a little bit. When you say that, like, what is it? Is it you stress yourself out too much by overly thinking?
Literally.
Or you can't sit by yourself?
No,
let's say you sat by yourself.
I find a lot of peace in being by myself, but but I'll keep my mind busy every time because I would stress out. Literally,
what
stress
would be
myself
like stressing you out? What would be coming into your head?
Money, like making my family's life a bit more comfortable, making my own life a bit more comfortable. Where's my future gonna be? Where am I gonna live in the future? Like nowadays, like there's more and more propaganda against living and staying in the UK. Which is funny because like I personally don't see a life for myself outside the UK. I don't know. I've thought about it so many times, and I really like deep it a lot sometimes.
No, it's a fair point. I mean, this is home to a lot of us.
And I get a lot of, like, because I see a lot of people moving and leaving, and like they really like push the propaganda. Like, I've got a sister who lives in Kenya now who literally said like she's constantly non-stop about Kenya, innit? I'm like, it can't be that good. Not to be like Western media, but like to that level,
nice, but
to that level where it's just constant propaganda. I'm just giving one example. Then I've got cousins in Qatar, in Dubai, and like the way they talk about it and like how compared to life here, and then I just think, but like I feel like I'll be away from my communities. We talked about it with Nabil. Like we talked about it with Nabil in the Prioritize the Mandem episode. Like, is it really success if you move away from the community and leave it? Like I do feel like I got a strong community here, like my friendship group as well. I don't feel like I could leave you guys and be happy.
That's very touching, man.
I'm being honest.
Happy as well.
I'm being honest. Like even my
that's real talk.
I got my in-laws here who are very supportive of us, and I really enjoy being around them. And then I got my own, like my mom's moved out of the country, which is sad. Like I feel like there's a big hole in my life because of that. You know. So like I often worry about where I'm gonna live, like not because of just pure money, but actually like
all the other stuff you just mentioned.
Exactly. So like when I'm by myself, I do find that I need to find better coping mechanisms to manage my stresses out a bit, and that's where I do keep saying, like I often revert back to my notepad on my notes app just to clear my mind a bit, like start writing lists down of things. It always gives me a game plan. So like I've always naturally been inclined to writing down my worries anyway, but in not in such a way where I'm dressing the worries.
Yeah.
Like I've done that every now and then where I journal things, but I've never done that consistently. But I consistently do write down things to address my worries, but not the worries themselves, you know? Yeah, that's where my relationship is with worry, I would say, and like my headspace is at.
And when you go through, let's say those times, at the end of it, how do you feel? Do you feel like it's do you feel like it's a constructive thought, or is it like it exacerbates the worry?
You mean like if I'm
like, let's say you're by yourself, you've
got
gone
no
through
stimulation,
and you're going through all those thoughts and stuff like that. When it starts to like add towards the end of it, is it kind of like, okay, fine, this is what I have to do to fix it, or is it kind of like it doesn't really go, it kind of just sits there for another time for you to think about?
I think I've been blessed in the last couple of years where I've been able to work from home a lot. Like I think that's like been a massive game changer. Like my life has changed because like if I'm commuting to the office, I got worried about taking the time to commute and not having as much time to downwind. And during that commute itself, it is jarring, and also like that's another time where I'm just gonna be myself thinking about myself. And then what do you call it? And then you're in the office in a space where it's not really comfortable environment. Like if you want to go to the toilet, it's a bit awkward. Like if you don't need number one, like there's just so many things. You want to go to the prayer room, for example. Like there was one office I had to leave the building and go to another building, a 15-minute walk away, which is like most of my lunch would go to walk in between offices just to go pray, which is not as much of an issue nowadays. Like a lot of companies are being a bit more inclusive about things, but like I think the daily commute really put me in a place where I was so worried and so stressed, where I would often get really sick because of that. Like my stomach, I wouldn't be able to leave the bed. My stomach would be hurting so much. Or I'll be getting a lot of migraines. I'll get cold. I'll call in sick so often that I'll get to a point where they'll give me a disciplinary, literally. And I'm like, there was one time I went to the GP and I said, like, I think I'm depressed because I'm stressed at work. And they were like, tell your work that. Literally, I was thinking, I might finally be able to get some therapy or some counseling.
Just tell your work that. That's wild.
I was like, but I already told my work that, but I felt like there was no way out at that point. But I just managed to cope. I just managed to survive, but it was always such a high pressure environment. And I was at the time.
You say you managed to survive. Do you mean like you just got through it, or like you did anything to? I
just got through it. I just got through it day by day. Like it's gonna be another grueling day. I just got to survive.
That's actually kind of what's the 15-minute walk towards the prayer thing. That in itself being a thing where you're alone with your thoughts. That's deep, man. I mean, I think when you were saying it, that like that's consistent
mental.
Nah, there was a word that was I remember listening to something about this a while back, which is like it's like something, the feedback loop.
Negative feedback loop
constantly in your head. That
exactly, and that's a very good point. So like I remember last year I got laid off for the first time in my career ever, and I started deep in. I was in my head, like that was the worst period of my last 10 years, I would say, in terms of just being in my own head. Like negative feedback loops. I was constantly creating negative feedback loops. Like, I was thinking, oh, this happened because of this, and this happened because of this, and then I'll get more stressed.
And you get more, exactly.
So I was trying to cope and make it into a more positive feedback loop by thinking about the good things and like the opportunities that could arise from it. And like now looking back, I'm still in a place where I'm not quite happy with the way things played out. But I'm also accepting of how things played out, and I'm also a bit grateful for things because I've learned a lot, and like since that happened, I've developed like massively. Like I would say like. If we're talking like a loading bar, I jumped from like, let's say 20% loading. Like let's say I was, for the last 10 years I was loading up to like 20%, and in the 1 year I feel like I've jumped to like 70%. Like 70%, I'm ready to do anything in my life, and I'm comfortable, you know. So I think like you said, negative feedback loops. Like people need to do their research around that. Like it's very important to understand and be aware that thinking about what you're thinking about on a daily basis, it can create habits in your head.
That's the crazy.
Is the way your brain naturally just roots into.
And you
know
the craziest thing is as well. It's like your brain develops and develops different patterns. For example, if you're having a lot of this negative feedback loop before you go into sleep, then you start getting anxious towards sleep.
Yeah.
And like,
That's true.
that sleeping time. And this,
You
that's
start doing
like, for
procrastination.
me, that's when I started the listening to stuff to kind of block out that feedback loop. I remember there was a time that it was like very anxious kind of timing.
Tell you what, headphone makers, yeah.
Huh?
Headphone makers, people who build headphones, they're having a laugh now. They're now an all-time high of people drowning out their thoughts.
Yeah. But it is mad, the fact that like how many people have to resort to
You're
that.
not the only person I've spoken to that says that they do
You know
that.
what I mean? Yeah.
I've seen a lot of other people.
Yeah, I know. And I was surprised by it. But like I was saying, for me, it was like, I remember, I think it was around the COVID kind of times, that I was just like going through like mad anxiety. Just again, worries about what's the situations, life, all this kind of stuff, how to improve, and wanting so much now that like sleep became a very tough thing. And then I remember I did go to, it wasn't the GP. I think that's where I went to actual like therapy thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really therapy. It was just kind of like
Counseling,
behavioral, like cognitive behavioral therapy kind of thing. I think it was more that.
That is therapy though.
Yeah, it was. But I was expecting to lie down on the couch and just to yap at someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it wasn't that. It was.
Bro wanted to vent. Yeah.
No, I remember it was just a lady called Louisa on the email, and then
It wasn't in person.
We had like maybe one phone call, and then after that she was just like, okay, fine, hey, do this like thing.
Take these
like,
steps.
It wasn't even steps. It was like write down what you do every day, then talk about when the stress comes, and then talk about this and that. And then it just felt, after a while, it felt like homework. But what I did enjoy from that was just actually writing, because I never journaled it before. But it was just journaling, that kind of stuff. And then I realized in that in my bedroom is where I would get a lot of anxiety. Then I was like, what the hell? Then I realized it's because it happens before I sleep. And then...
but feng shui is so important.
Huh?
Feng shui.
Feng shui.
Yeah.
I mean,
important.
It for me, it didn't really help that much. It was just like the moment I see the pillow, it's like, here we go.
For me, like another thing for me, like I feel mentally pressured if like I have clutter around me. Like, I genuinely feel pressure and like stress.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's another thing from my childhood, like just growing up in a big family. Yeah, there's always like
no, but I think that's an actual thing.
Yeah,
that they tell people to clean up their
like the whole idea of feng shui is create an environment that's comfortable for yourself. That you're able to be optimized in terms of like just living. Like sometimes if like I'll create these negative feedback loops in my head where I'm going through a tough period, so I'll let myself go a bit in terms of I'll just stop like getting haircuts. Because when I don't get haircuts, I start looking rough in it. Like, I stop getting haircuts.
Damn.
I still shower, don't worry. I'm not one of those guys, but I'll leave the clothes around. I'll leave clothes lying around a lot, like, and then like piles of clothes start building up, and then I'll just start eating junk food, like just constant junk food, and then and junk food's expensive nowadays, which is another thing. You're like, damn, and then like you feel like you get to a point where, or I got to a point where I wouldn't leave my room a lot. Yeah. Or sometimes I'll be working from home, so I wouldn't leave my house for like a good couple of days.
Just feel icky and stuff.
Just
grungy.
Kind of. Yeah. But there's like this massive cloud, like a mental fog in my head where I just don't want to do anything, don't want to see anyone. Don't want to pick up the phone. And like it is often in those areas, like once I just like give myself a little spring clean, where like there's one day where I'm like, maybe it's like my batteries are charged a bit again, where I'm like, bunny, I have to get out of this. I'll go clean everything up, and I just feel like a completely different person. And then if I go get a trim as well, then like now I'm feeling real good, you know. So yeah, man, I think getting that environment sorted as well is another very important thing. Which is why, like for me, like we're talking about worrying and putting ourselves in positions to stop worrying so much. Like another reason, like as I was like reading this book, I was just resonating with it so much because I've been operating in a world where I'm constantly putting myself in high pressure environments. Like my work itself, the nature of it is stress, because like it's always my work. I'm called if something wrong happens. So I'm the person responsible to fix it. Or make sure that it's being fixed. So like the nature of the work itself is stressful. And because of that, I'm always on edge. I don't enjoy it. Like my managers, like
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, I mean, if you're getting called just to deal with the problems,
Yeah.
you're like, the only reason why you called me right now is because something's up.
Yeah, and oftentimes I've also got like there's a lot of things that just go against my spirit. Like I've got to also be the messenger of bad news to someone else. Then after, if I can't fix something, I gotta go like especially if it's in like the nighttime, for example, I gotta go call someone else, and then they like sometimes I got to coach them and be like, I'm like pissed at myself. I'm like, oh, I got called. I'm not trying to deal with this right now, but and now this guy's upset at me as well for calling him.
Yeah,
And I'm trying to coach him now to like just like settle down, man. Let's just sort this out together. Both of us are responsible for this. Yeah. And then that's like another annoying factor about it. And this can happen at any time of the day. So like one of the ways I want to like just leave, like put myself in a position where I'm worrying less is just put myself in an environment where I'm not dealing with that. So sometimes I'm like, oh, what about money? What about money? But then I'm like, but am I ever gonna operate at a point where I'm earning enough money to leave this career, like to be in this career and be comfortable? No, because the nature of the work itself is stressful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I've got to leave this career and find an environment where I'm stable enough to go ahead and then do other creative things
to
and
use that as a leverage to bounce up.
and like have that feng shui mentally. Like I got a routine. I know my work isn't that stressful. There's different levels of jobs, and there's some jobs that just mentally finish you. Like I'd prefer to be physically like finished than mentally finished.
Yeah, of course.
Because then you can't do anything like creatively, which is a real driving force for our worries, I would say as well.
Because also, even if you have the energy to do it, mentally you feel like you can't do it.
Yeah, because you don't have the juice. You can't start a car, you know? Like that blank canvas is like one of the scariest things for an artist, right? Like even if you're like starting a video project, for example, like that's another, like it's very scary to just start.
Yeah.
And when you don't have the mental energy to start, then where do you go? And like, how can you be consistent in any way, shape, or form? So I think really like putting yourself in an environment and like really thinking about like where is this worry coming from? What's the worst case scenario? Does it make sense for you to stay in that position because of that? No. So like for me, I've come to the conclusion where like as I was listening to this book, I was like, damn, like this is really resonating with me. I was gonna say it in a spot, but
to be fair, you texted me saying this is hitting the spot.
I know. But you commented on it now, so I gotta find other ways.
No, you can keep saying this is your thing. Put that on a t-shirt. You know what I mean?
Next time I'm gonna say it's pushing me out. Hook, line, and sinker. But for me, like I've just come to so many conclusions as I'm reading this book. Like, I'm just like, it doesn't make sense logically for me to stay in a place where
you feel constantly
there's no
worried.
room for growth mentally. So how can I possibly say, oh, I'm going to be a creative in the future? How can I possibly say I'm going to go get wealthy? And that's where like, it's really helped me, I'd say, benefited me so far.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think then it also leads to the next part, which is the actually doing part. You know what I mean? Because I think one thing that he said was to come up with a definitive decision rather than a few options that sound good to you. You know what I mean? I think, and that is essentially, even for me, is kind of like you want to become someone that's, let's say, up there creatively, making it your profession, etc., etc. That sounds good, but then now, how do you actually do it? Yeah, how do you actually get there?
But for me, I'm like, that's the worry for later. Like, let me not think about tomorrow's jam. Let me worry about that later. Let me put myself in a bit more of a stable position first.
Yeah. I think that's where we differ, because I feel like for me, it's like, I think I recently listened to an Ali Abdal video where he was kind of talking about I think a guy who was like 30, he was a teacher and he was trying to become financially free, and he had no idea how to kind of go about it. And having no idea is also another sign, like, can bring on the worry, the stress by being like, okay, cool, I don't know how to fundamentally go somewhere.
Uncertainty,
exactly. Where he was showing a diagram of like a tent and a camp on one side, and then someone starting to trail out on one side, where it's kind of like, if a person knows, okay, I'm going to take this trail route, take a left or right, go up over this little hill, and then I'll get to my destination this way. And then they can put blinkers on and then just go about their way of kind of doing it. Whereas, so now, that kind of stuff is what takes me out of the rut, knowing where I'm going.
Yeah, having a plan.
Definitively, of being like, okay, this is for this day, I'm going to record this, that then edits this. And then, because eventually it does all lead to a bigger plan, you know what I mean? It's like, for example, I remember at the beginning, it was just kind of like, what's the point of making videos that aren't going to go viral? Then I realized it's not necessarily about that. It's like I'm still making videos. Obviously, eventually one of them will pop, but on top of that, you're also building a catalog and you're also getting better. So then when that opportunity meets that bit of fortune, then you're ready to actually kind of do it. I think the best example is like Kevin Hart, where he was writing material for his special for a long time and he was about to tape it. And just before that time came, Shaq asked him, listen, I've got this all-star thing. Do you want to do this, a comedy set? And then he said it was fortunate enough that he had that piece written. Otherwise, that opportunity would have just passed him by. He would have not been ready for it.
Yeah, you got to make your own luck and be ready to take the lucky opportunities up.
Yeah, because opportunities come by. Like even now, it's like people
especially when
are
you put yourself
reaching out.
there.
People are like, okay, what do you do? And then you've got like, okay, this is what we do. This is Inspyre. Even that's how I was getting the guests previously. Even though we didn't have videos, we still had a catalog of episodes that was like on podcasts and stuff like that for them to listen to. So it's like, okay, cool, you're actually doing something. So it's like, for me, it was always like that something has to be the big thing. Where necessarily now I'm realizing it doesn't. But you're just taking small steps that will obviously lead you to the trail, you know?
And when you deep it, like we're 1 season and a half of doing things consistently again for the first time in 4 years. So like technically you're a beginner. If you're in a career, like if you're in retail, someone who's just 1 year, not even 1 year, let's say, like if we're talking about a season for us is less than 1 year.
Literally.
If it's 20 episodes, it's 20 weeks, that's half a year. So if you're someone who's working in a retail environment for half a year, you're not going to become a manager. Unless you're naturally really like gifted at talking to people and managing people. So like you really, I think, and we've already started seeing like people reaching out to us naturally. And we're not even really putting ourselves out there like that. So I think for you, I think you do definitely need to balance your expectations.
No, that's what it is. Like I said, I'm too much, just like you, I'm too much of a daydreamer. And I think my head is always in the clouds way too much.
What if? All right, cool. So I don't know what like you said, you're taking steps to write down specifically where you want to be or whatever. But what if you set yourself like a target, like something very low level, like 3 people reach out to us this year. Like if it happens, like it's a good thing technically. But are you gonna be ungrateful for it? Like
what do you mean?
Like 3 opportunities for us. Let's say sponsorships or whatever, or guests or publishers reaching out to us. Like if you would set that at a very low bar.
No, that'd be great. It's just kind of
if you
like,
say okay, but like that hasn't happened so far. But if it does happen, it's great. Like how would that work in terms of your patience and stuff?
Okay, so like essentially that's a very good question, because that was something that I was thinking about as well. And it's just kind of like, for example, I remember before I even started or kicked off Inspyre again, I had like written down different phases. So like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Which are very idealistic, I would say.
You know? But it was kind of like, so then the phase 1, okay, I named it like the restart. Right, so starting off the thing, getting podcast studio, doing all this kind of stuff, etc. You know, garnering the people, the audience, etc. All this kind of stuff, right? And then it's like I already know, or I have a vision in my head of like where it would go when all of that kind of stuff does happen. So it's like when that opportunity does come, or like when we get to that level, it's not like hit by surprise. It's kind of, okay, this is just a step to get to this part now. So like it's like the reaching out stuff, and I haven't lowballed anything, because I'm just like, okay, in the beginning, this is how it would be. This is part of the thing. And then but then stage 3, 4, and then it's like that's when you're really up there. So it's like, but I'm just constantly wanting that. Right now. Without forgetting that I actually written down phases to get to that that step. And that's like essentially kind of how I see it. It's more like a vision that I see.
Do you review that regularly? Do you review that regularly?
I review that regularly, yeah. And I've like put actual numbers to it to see like when we're getting towards that, which I'll show you after as well. of like when it feels like we are ready to get into like the next phase, essentially. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think we've run out of time anyway. But yeah, I think this is a very deep topic we could talk about for a long time. But yeah, it kind of relates to the other previous episodes we talked about. We talked about what's stopping you. Talked about making time. And yeah, I feel like next week is May. I think we're coming up to half a year soon. End of May. I feel like we should do a 6-month review.
Catch up.
Where we are. But yeah, I mean, another really enjoyable book for me. Something that will work for a lot of people, and like you don't have to read the whole thing in one go like we did, but take your time with it and really digest some of the points that you made.
Digest it,
But yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, no, 100%. So if you guys enjoyed that one, let us know what you guys think. I would say, like I said, I would highly recommend it for anyone that feels like they're not where they want to be right now or where they're going. Definitely all your friends or someone you know that you would recommend it to, definitely share it. And we really appreciate you guys sticking by, listening. And as always, we shall see you guys in the next one.
Thank you very much for listening.
Keep moving, keep growing, keep learning. See you at work.